Panya, how do you feel about that? Is that something that's close to you?
Actually, I agree with my call again. We also discussed a lot. Some people say the main factor of violence against women is like alcohol use, poverty, lack of education. That are, we agree, that's one factor. But the main factor that we could see is that power relationship, unequal power relationship actually that make men use violence. And in our society, especially like women are always considered as the subordinate position in the family as well as in the society. Men always be in the position of leadership or superior position. And women always considered as or are expected to be like if you want to be a good woman, you should be soft, you should be polite, you should serve the husband, you should be tolerant to all kinds of situations in the family, and you should not bring the issue from the family to the outside. It can create more problem. Yeah. So this kind of like mindset that bring the more it's like encourage more violence against women to happen. Yeah.
So which should come first? Is it, do we need the law to come first to say this is unacceptable, or are we as a society responsible for taking our children and saying this is unacceptable?
I think we need to consider both as the main important thing to do. One, to work in the whole society, to discuss and reflect what should be happening, how can we contribute to make us living together, happiness, peaceful, and respect each other. And at the same time, law is also important. We should have law and policy to protect women from being abused. And when we have the law, we need also to make sure that the law really put into enforcement. Yeah. Because from our experience, we have law and policy to protect women. However, the implementation is still weak. We need to work a lot more to make the law really effective to protect women from violence against women. Yeah.
Michael, I see you nodding away there.
You agree? I just totally agree with the.
So it needs to be attacked from all different levels, does it? Where do we start though? Where do we start? There must be a starting point, is there?
You know, I don't think there's one starting point, because I think it depends the work we're doing. If I'm a policymaker, that's where I'm starting. I'm starting, you know, making sure we have laws. If I'm just over the last few days, I've been meeting with them, an amazing range of people, but we each have our starting point. If I'm a teacher, an educator, I'm going to be trying to work with parents and with the kids. You know, you do a lot of work in the community. You're working in the union movement, so you're working in the workplace. So, you know, I think the way there's one of the amazing things that's happening, and the reason why I think progress is being made in this is that so many different people are grabbing onto to starting where they are at, and not just saying, oh, I'm going to, you know, vote for, you know, the person I like and let them do it, but saying, just like you were, Andrew, when you were talking about taking action within your union. It wasn't, you weren't waiting for a different law to be passed. You said this is our responsibility.
And in fact, the laws and the policies have always, as I said, we always had the policy saying that, you know, you'll not harass or bully or victimise or for that matter assault people in the workplace. But you know, all those laws have been around the English common law for, you know, centuries. But for instance, we're in the middle at the moment. We're taking an employer to the federal court at the moment, and this employer believes that it's okay to assault by poking, prodding, pushing, slapping workers. And the problem is not the law. It's clearly illegal or unlawful what is being perpetrated. It's a matter of enforcing it. But the most important thing that those workers have done, and some of them are women, is to actually say no. To say that they're not prepared to put up with that bullying and harassment and violence in the workplace. Now that employer has responded by sacking people and taking taking the sort of action that you'd expect from a disreputable person, whether they're an employer or not. But the issue is that there are still employers who believe that it is acceptable to perpetrate violence against workers, just the same as there are some workers who believe that it's okay to perpetrate violence against especially women. The policies are important, but the most important thing is for those people who are observing or who are victims to say no and to band together in after all, the great principle of union solidarity with others to say this is unacceptable. And I think that part of White Ribbon Day and what it does is to not only legitimise that opposition to violence against women, but it also enables people to say, regardless of our political perspective or our position in society, that there's the capacity for all of us to say no, it is not acceptable. And I think that great refusal upon which a lot of social theories and social movements are based is something that White Ribbon Day and the policies and processes inherent in White Ribbon Day actually provide a great basis for that great refusal.
Is this something that we're not really conscious of, that may be happening around us every day in the workplace, but we're so used to it happening that we don't stop and think that this is different and this is wrong and something needs to be done about it? Is there much of that operating in the workplace? There
are certain workplaces where people are inured to the idea that, you go to work and you do get poked and prodded. That the integrity of the person means nothing to either fellow workers or to your employer. And thankfully they're becoming less and less. It's the no touching rule, which I think now is more or less entrenched in schools. It does have limitations in that sometimes we talk about how it doesn't engender affection when natural affection can be expressed. But I think that that's an important part of the way that in public institutions we're saying that it is that any form of violence should not be allowed, and the mechanisms to ensure that doesn't take place should be there. So nobody can be under any illusions about the ambiguity of something of an involuntary touching or going worse into an assault. In the workplace, I think it's really crucial that we have the capacity for those people who do believe it's acceptable for them to effectively see the error of their ways. Good policy is clearly crucial to that, but I think that it also needs to be engendered in other ways, such as in training courses, when young people, especially, are undertaking apprenticeships and traineeships. They need to have part of their education isn't just how do you operate a lathe, how do you weld two bits of metal together, but it's also about how do you operate with other human beings in the workplace and in the community. What is an acceptable way of working with them, and that we as a community say these are important and decent rules by which you should operate.
What sort of response have you had from workplaces with regard to those issues?
I could give my own personal experience. About 30 years ago, when I was a delegate in the workplace, there was a woman worker who was being harassed by a male, and when I saw that it was distressing her, I said to him, "Well, I don't think that's acceptable." He then threatened to knock my block off, which is the great Australian response to violence, I suppose. We now have a situation, though, I think, where harassment and bullying is just not seen as acceptable, and it's done. And if it is done, it's done furtively. I'm concerned about the legalisation in some respects. I mean, here I am talking about going to the federal court, but I am concerned about the legalisation of harassment and bullying and violence in the workplace. Oftentimes people will say, "Oh, I can't raise that because there were no witnesses." Well, as if you need a witness to know that you've been harassed or bullied or subject to victimisation. You know if that's the case. The difficulty, of course, is that many organisations take that legalistic route. We need to make sure that the collective processes of workers through unions is something that enables those people to know that they've got support mechanisms, which in turn enable them then to turn around and say to or their representative, their workplace delegate or whatever, on their behalf to say, "Look, this is unacceptable behaviour." They don't need to have a witness to be able to say it, but that unfortunately is where a lot of people say, "Oh, there's no witnesses, therefore I can't undertake any protective actions against myself." And that furtive nature of it these days, I think, we need to address as well.
And can also be a culture of the workplace
Yes.
too, can't it?
Yes.
Which is, I guess, an even harder issue to address.
Yes, it is, especially if that culture, as I said before, is one where people are inured to the idea that the boss or a foreman or a fellow worker has, walks up to them and slaps them or pokes them or whatever. That sort of approach can be very difficult to break. And of course, thankfully we're getting back towards full employment here in Queensland. But in a situation where people are fearful for their livelihoods, especially if you don't have very many skills, those people who are subject to that culture or that behaviour often think that to step out of line invites dismissal. We again need to have stronger mechanisms and the capacity for people to join with others and say, no, this is unacceptable, is a crucial part of people protecting themselves and adopting protective behaviours.
I heard, if I can jump in, I heard a wonderful story lately. A woman told me that she was going from the transit or the car to her workplace, and she had to pass a construction site. This is in Ottawa, Canada. She was passing a construction site, and so as she passed, the different guys on the site, were whistling at her, calling out to her, saying things about her. And so she endured this for the whole length of this block. And at the very end, she had had enough, and there was one more guy there. So she stopped, and she just turned to him and said, when you guys were on strike, last year or 2 years ago, whenever this was, I supported you guys. Like I went by, I congratulated you, I said I was with you, I talked to other people. And now, here I am walking by, and you guys are harassing me. And I just want to tell you that. So she went on. So the next morning, she had to do this route again. She walks by, and as she's walking, all the guys on the site, they just stop and they just nod to her like this, and then just like that. And then she gets to the very end of the site, and the last guy standing there with a sign that says, "This is a harassment-free construction zone." So,